Okay, good morning or good afternoon for those joining us from the region. Good morning and good evening for those from outside the region. My name is Fahad Al-Turki, the Vice President of Research here at CAPSARC, and I would like to welcome you all to our webinar on the digital transformation in the context of the energy transition. This webinar is hosted by CAPSARC in collaboration with the Society of Petroleum Engineers, the Digital Technology Section, as well as Baker Hughes. For those who are familiar with CAPSARC, they know that we have 6 main research programs. The topic today intertwines with almost all 6 of them, but in particular, the market and industrial development, where we look at oil and gas and hydrogen and their contribution to the industry. Energy information management, where we look at data and tools. Both program directors for these 2 programs are present with us, Magdi Swelem and Amar. We also have the program energy transition and electrical power, where there's a lot of focus on the digitalization. But the topic also touches on climate and environment program, transportation, as well as policy and decision science. As we have experienced over the last few years under COVID-19, the digital transformation has gained a greater momentum. And is perceived as received by leading oil and gas companies as an essential tool to not only improve efficiency and reduce costs, but also to accelerate decarbonization of the oil and gas value chain, as well as contribute to the circular carbon economy framework. If we look at the history of the digital transformation, many large-scale digital applications have experienced setbacks and challenges and have under-delivered on what they have envisioned to be fulfilled. But in the era of the energy transition, oil and gas developers are raising the bar of expectations and emphasizing the role of digitalization in reshaping the future of the industry as a whole. So it is for this reason, we at CAPSARC try to understand the quest of the energy transition, which requires not only reinventing the business model, but also focusing on the whole ecosystem of capital investments, enabling regulations, technical breakthrough, as well as aligning educational and training programs for the various sectors under the energy landscape. Needless to say, all these components of the ecosystem are continuously changing and evolving over time under the era of transition. And there is no one size that fits all approaches to approach the net zero. It is for this purpose that we, along with our partners today, brought in experts from the oil and gas industry, academia, R&D and innovation centers, information management, as well as policymakers, to try to discuss as well as understand the fundamental value, resources of human capital availability, limitation of existing technologies, market entry barriers, and commercial scalability. We will also, throughout today, will highlight the role of digital transformation in advanced emission quantification and fugitive gas monitoring, as well as flare management and emission abatement in a process of optimizing through artificial intelligence. Throughout the session today, we will also have an opportunity to discuss the challenges and risk of digital transformation, as well as de-risking strategies and risk of digital transformation, and mitigate risks of digital transformation, as well as minimizing any adverse and unintended consequences on major oil and gas producers as they go through the transformation. I look forward for the discussion today, and I hope that this discussion will result in future collaboration with our co-hosts. And I would like to pass the mic to our co-hosts. We have with us Dr. Saeed Al-Mubarak, the chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, the Digital Energy section, as well as Abdurrahman Bil-Yusuf, the Vice President of Saudi Arabia and Bahrain at the Baker Hughes, who unfortunately wasn't able to join us today, but we have a recording for his opening remark. So we'll start with Abdurrahman, and then we will pass the mic to Dr. Saeed. Fahad, there is no voice. Apology for this technical issue. Our colleague Fahad from CAPSARC is working on it. Okay, it seems the technical issue is still in place. So if I may, while you, Fahad, work on resolving this issue, pass the mic to Dr. Saeed Al-Mubarak, the chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers. Dr. Saeed, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the introduction. And the thank extends to those invisible soldiers who are working and investing their time and efforts behind the scene. Well, I'm Saeed Al-Mubarak, and I'm representing here the Digital Energy Technical section. And today's two main subjects are basically digital transformation and energy transitions. And you would see discussions of various sectors that are very ambitious about both of them and the results as well, with lots of the efforts. And you would see people who are skeptical about what might come and what might the challenges be for both of them, and to have them more of produce the value that they plan for. Most of the discussions today, you will hear about either pro or skeptics about these two subjects, but definitely it will be more of a learning opportunity, educational opportunity, and exploratory. And definitely this session can be followed up by other sessions to digest and discuss in details some of the subjects, and definitely will be open to your remarks, recommendations, and comments, and feel free to share with us your views and the subjects that you would like to hear about in future sessions. I wish you a very entertaining and educational program, and I think it's time to start if the technical issues still persist. Otherwise, just to play the recorded video. See you then.
Thank you, Dr. Saeed. Well, I think the challenge with technology is showing us its difficulty today. So let's see if the video plays again. Otherwise, we will move to the first session with Dr. Majid. So, Fahad, can you play the video? Okay. So, so if the video is, Fahad, can you stop the video and put your mic? Okay. So if I may invite Osama.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Apologies for this technical difficulty. Would have loved for Abdurrahman to give his opening remark. On his behalf, thank you for inviting Baker Hughes to co-host this event with you. What we want to do throughout this event is to look at how we could cater to the world need of energy without compromising progress of humanity, and at the same time ensuring that the resulting emissions that center stage today in today's environment do not hamper the growth of our society. We have Baker Hughes, as you know, we play across the entire value chain of hydrocarbons and energy, and we have committed ourselves to be net zero by 2050. We want to do this for ourselves and to help our customers achieve this role. We look forward to listening to this, to what the speakers today have to say, and thank you very much again.
Thank you, Osama. And we look forward to working together on these related issues. I would like now to pass the mic to the moderator for our first session on digital transformation, realities and expectations. The moderator will be our colleague here at CAPSARC, Majid Swalem, who is the acting director for the Market and Industrial Development Program. Majid, the mic is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Fahad Turki. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Before I introduce the speakers, let me share with you a quick background on this topic, and I'm quite confident that our esteemed presenters will touch base on some of these points. Digital transformation is not new to the oil and gas industry. The earliest digital applications are dated to the early 1980s, most of which were in the fields of geosciences and reservoir simulation, which witnessed major breakthroughs driven by the advanced computing. Since then, numerous applications and projects have grown steadily. Most of the progress in the digital transformation space were in pilot tests or in small to medium-sized field and industrial projects. The success of these projects intrigued large operators, both national and private companies, to scale them up. However, many, if not most, here I'm being the devil's advocate, most of these large-scale digital projects have experienced setbacks and challenges and have under-delivered on what they had envisaged to fulfill. Some blame it on oil prices. The oil and gas industry have experienced drastic oil price swings over the past 2 decades. Oil prices collapsed during the financial crisis in 2008, another incident in 2013, and lately during the pandemic, and God knows what will happen during this new variant. These swings had implications for investments pertaining digital transformation projects. When the oil prices were high, big companies laid long-term plans to develop and deploy digital transformational strategies and business models. But after the oil prices collapsed, these projects were either postponed or basically canceled. As the oil and gas now is gradually and steadily recovering from the aftermath of the demand destruction in 2020, digital transformation has gained momentum. But the narrative this time is quite different. It's not only about energy efficiency improvement or cost optimization. It's now geared more to focus on decarbonization and combat climate change. Given this brief historical context that I just walked you through, I could not help but to wonder what will happen to these projects when oil prices fall once again. And as we speak, Brent crude is now selling around $70 per barrel. Perhaps the issue is deeper than oil prices. I could be wrong, but let's see what our speakers have to say with this regard. Our first presenter is Dr. Saeed Mubarak. Mr. Mubarak is a worldwide recognized digital transformation expert with over 30 years of experience in various roles and responsibilities in the oil and gas industry. Saeed is currently an intelligent fields and petroleum engineering consultant at Saudi Aramco and the chairman of the Society of Petroleum Engineers Digital Energy Technical Section. He's published several papers and a book to promote innovation and challenge conventional wisdom within and beyond the digital energy and intelligent fields. On a personal note, Saeed Mubarak is a colleague of mine from the old days. I had used some of the innovative applications and tools that he co-developed in the domains of intelligent well completions, which yielded major cost savings for the company at that time. I couldn't find anyone better than Saeed Mubarak to speak about this critical topic and share with his insights with us. Saeed, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the great introduction, and I hope I deserve it. Well, I'll be speaking about digital transformation and energy transition and what's in common. I hope you hear the sound is okay and you see the first slide. Let's just say yes, Majid, and
we hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much. And whenever we speak about transitions, we speak about people, maybe technologies or tools and processes. And you will hear these basically enablers or qualifiers for any transition. And let's give you some, historical events and evolution on the societies, and everything, in fact, goes into evolutions, including us. So human being or the society started from hunting to agriculture to the industrial, and now we speak about the digital, and that's really knowledge and super intelligence. And you will hear a lot about the digital transformation. What comes with digital is basically, yes, data. It might be raw data, but it could be even, knowledge and wisdom. In the old days, knowledge-based economy was more of constrained by borders. So if you have an experience or a trial test and sort of a way of hunting animals or farming, then it might be just localized in a certain location. But with the advancements of technology, now we could share and exchange and transfer knowledge in an easy way. And this platform now and the workshop here is just an evidence of how much data would flow between all of us. It's in fact in knowledge and wisdom. So what used to be individual results and innovation, now it's more of collective innovation. And I see Tony's nodding his head and definitely agrees with me. And we've been exchanging enormous of ideas just through these digital technologies and means. Now, when it comes to evolutions, it's not only societies that evolve, it's technologies, and definitely there are very primitive technologies, but now you might be seeing technologies that are built of those simple technologies. Some of them call them advanced, some of them call them complex, and for the devil advocate, definitely they would go to a description of complex technologies. I'm talking to Majid here. Now, industries have also evolved, and you would be hearing about the first industrial revolution, and then the second, the third, and the fourth. And if you look at the fourth in particular, which I have some sort of my own opinion about it, it's just a collective, it's using the technology that exists. Is it really a revolution? I might have a different opinion because it hasn't really changed the way we do things. It's just an integration of existing, technologies. Now, when technologies and industries evolve, definitely regulations and policies do change as well, and even us. And let me just, remove part of this technology because it's blocking the way. Now, before I start the presentation, the real slides about digital transformation, let me just share with you a few tips that are very applicable to both digital transformation and energy transition. Definitely same ingredients don't yield similar results. So you could see company A, be it a national oil company, independent operator, or international operator, speak about the same technologies and their applications with all of the enablers that are associated with the deployment of these technologies. They might be talking about different results, and that's because of the many variables associated with it beyond the ingredients. Now, there is no one size fits all. So different fields, different countries, different policies, different geography requires different applications and different technologies. And whenever one or a company wants to deploy a certain technology, they don't really seek technology for the sake of it, and they seek the value out of it, and they seek the application. So usually it's a fit for purpose. It's not really an entertainment, or an investment that they want to lose. And they would know their capabilities, be it for the people themselves, the technology itself, and the assets that they're operating, and the limitations that are associated with the uncertainties within the technology itself. And definitely they would have a short and a long term whenever they apply certain technologies. Now, what are the enablers for either digital transformation and energy transition? Definitely technologies. And if you look at the spheres to the right side, the sphere size represents the investment size. So the bigger the sphere, the bigger the investment. So with technologies, they are expensive. And with time, they get advanced, new versions come, and they become cheaper. A newer version comes. So what comes with the advancements of technology is fast obsolescence as well in previous technologies. And that has to be put in the equation. The business environment and how is another enabler, and how companies operate, the organizational structure, how they communicate, leadership, management, and even the teams within the company. And Tony is the expert when it comes to, let's say, business environment and change management, just to bring the environment or the business environment to a level to capitalize on the technologies and other enablers. Then optimization processes. It's just like Uber. What they've used basically is they used existing technologies, but they came up with the business model that uses basically the existing technologies and people. But if you look at these enablers in a different perspective, what you would see here basically is people are the ones basically bringing the highest value. I'm sorry about that. So they're the ones inventing technologies that fits for a purpose. They're the ones know where they should deploy it, and they're the ones creating the environment and coming up with the processes to make sure that these technologies or business environment yield the maximum value for a certain country, a company, or individual. Now, what's with the technology now? And you see some I'm talking about the borderless world. When it comes to the technology, you see the cyberspace, it's just eliminated borders. And now there are people within this workshop from the States, there are people from the Far East, and there are people in the Middle East. So borders are eliminated. Education and knowledge can be transferred easily. There is no border when it comes to it. The climate is the same, and that's that comes up with the new discussions and the recent discussion about climate and energy transition. Health, and the pandemic is an evidence. It seems to be there is no border to even viruses. Economy, definitely, it's a ripple effect. When a country is affected by a certain incidents, then almost the whole world gets affected, especially if the country has a weight. Energy transition is the same. So if you look at the picture over there, children, animals, insects, and fishes see no borders through their innocent eyes, but definitely strategists who see the world as one unit, they should not really think about borders because things affect each other. Now, look at this picture just to demonstrate how basically we look at the world at night. And if you look at it over here, you see where the places that are lightened at night. And that's a reflection of the places that have infrastructure, the places that have power, and they generate power. It doesn't, and they're really advanced. When you look at it, it's let's say the most lucid areas: Japan, North America, Europe, the Middle East, and basically close to the shores. Look at Africa as the darkest place. Now, when it comes to energy and the transition and all the discussions and policies, they don't come up from the darkest places. They come up from the most advanced places, and they're the ones that are emitting the largest amount of CO2. So they're already advanced. They put policies. They're already in a stage where these policies, maybe they can accommodate, but the ones in the dark places, they find it really, really challenging to accommodate these policies if they want to advance, and it would be really expensive. Now, this is a poll that I ran and LinkedIn. Today, would you be willing to pay double what you're paying for energy, regardless? It's gas, it's oil, it's energy, mostly no. And I think people would prefer to pay less. So when it comes to any transition, we need to think of human-centric. It needs to be really affordable, and any change comes at a cost. So who will be paying the bill to do these advancements? And as we stated in the spheres, the highest cost comes to the technology. This is another plot which shows basically the distribution of the world's natural resources. And if you remember the previous one, the world at night, the brightest areas with lots of light is basically the lightest areas here, and they are almost short of resources. Yet the darkest places seems to be the richest countries of resources. That's something to think about. Now, distribution for wealth per adult, and that's money. The brightest places are the ones that are basically with the highest GDP. I mean, they're basically the richest countries in the world. Now, transformation of wealth. I mean, since we're talking about transformation, let's give this example. This is a bar of iron that costs only $5. If you convert it to horseshoes at $12, needles, 3,500. And then balance springs, they're 300,000. And definitely those natural resources that exist in the poor countries, they go to the countries that, make the transformation to the iron bar and to the balance springs that are installed maybe in Rolex watches. And this is why they're expensive. And they're sold back to certain countries, let's say, that need them. So the value really comes if we are able to transform the raw material into more valuable material. It's just like data over here, and people are talking about smart factories, intelligent fields, digital oil fields, and this is the digital transformation. So if you're able to transform the wealth of data, basically, and you will hear about data mining, AI, and artificial intelligence, big data, all of these terms. It's not really a hype. They're using basically the data whenever it's applicable to produce value or insights. It's not only in the government or e-commerce, smart cities, and now e-governments. And if you look at, let's say, Saudi Arabia government, it's one of the most advanced e-governments. And it's just using data, creating processes, and using technologies that exist, in fact, everywhere. And that's basically it. So if you later on, we'll see you the real enablers when it comes to transition. Now, investment in education and human development. You would see here, again, the dark places are the places where the investment on education is the highest. It's again, same areas, except with additional South America, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and Russia, Europe, Japan, and North America. Now, let's see if knowledge shares is knowledge multiplied. That's a quick example to demonstrate the value of knowledge. And if you have an apple, let's imagine has an apple, and I have an orange, and we just exchange. He will have the orange, I'll have the apple. If he has a laptop and I have money, and if we exchange, then I have the laptop and he has the money. But if he has an idea, and it is a great idea, I have the money, I can buy the idea, but he will still, the idea, I still have it, and the money as well. But if I have an idea, that's A, and he has an idea B, and we just exchange, both of us have both ideas. And this is basically when we say we can collaborate and even transform the ideas into even better ideas. Now, when it comes to the oil, this is how much oil basically the world needs, and this is a 200 years chart, and it shows basically the world needs more energy. So be it oil, alternative energy, the world needs more energy. And that's a call for more efficient energy, production and use as well, and exploring the various options to increase basically the sources of energy and where we can get them. Now, there isn't a one size fits all, as we described. So cleaner energy, we have to honor nature, use appropriate technologies, maybe new business models, and definitely collaboration and new policies. But to be fair, everybody has to climb the tree. This is a cartoon I think that you've seen. Not every country can basically, you cannot really apply all the policies into all the countries because they're in different stages of maturity and even GDP and other things, and even education, as we demonstrated in the maps. And now fundamentals are irreplaceable. This is what we go through usually when it comes to an assessment of anything, be it digital transformation or energy transition. We go from collecting data to analysis, decision, and action, and they're really expensive when it comes to the investment. But now with the digital world, if you're disconnected and you rely too much on technology, then you might just end up failing. Now, this is the future. One of the question might, pop up, and the future belongs to, and this cartoon might just demonstrate where the, a tale of power and I'll stay silent here. And this is a pessimistic person. He has an objective to move to the future. Definitely he has technologies and all the rest of the enablers, but the gap is really huge. So he decides to stay. Pragmatic comes, calculates the thing. And it seems to be very hard to go to the future. And somebody else comes who possesses power and vision. Well, it's a discussion. They formulate a plan and they're able to move to the future. And when they move to the future, it's not only them who move the future. In fact, they create a path for the rest to move to the future, including the pessimistic and pragmatic individuals or mindsets. And they continue march, the rest is fail. Now, what is the most important enabler for any transition or transformation? And this is a poll of many people, it's leadership. And when we discuss the vision of 2030 in certain countries, including our dear country, then that's the thing. You've got power and vision. And this is how you basically could move things a little bit faster, where you could change even if the vision is solid, but you can change if you're flexible enough. Now, that's a cartoon. It's almost the last slide, but it's when people are close enough to a project or a thing, and considering they're blind and they don't see the elephant, everybody touches a place, they will think that it is the thing. But sometimes a child from outside could see the whole picture. So sometimes we need to zoom out to see the full picture instead of just zooming in and seeing things really close, and we become so blind. And this particular digital transformation and energy transition, the two subjects are, they require a global eye, and because it's a global system. Now, final tips, and that's my final slide. Continuity is really important, and if you look at it over here, it's really a tiny change, but definitely within time, it's cumulative, and it is a big change. And the last thing is plant seeds, grow ideas, and definitely in the future, it's the image. It's something that you can harvest, and if you cannot harvest, then your descendants can. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saeed, for underscoring the importance of incorporating human-centric approach to energy transition, which sometimes are being misunderstood by many. The human element is key to any successful transitions to any forms of energy we're talking about. Our next speaker is Dr. Mike Roshan, Chief Technology Officer at C3 AI. Dr. Mike has 20 years of experience in various industrial domains related to the corporate, digital, and AI-driven strategic initiatives. At C3, Mike leads the establishment of joint centers of excellence for AI and data analytics, focusing on business deliverables. In his presentation, Mike will talk about the importance of developing back-to-back solutions, especially to embrace the energy transition. Dr. Roshan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, salam alaikum everyone, and warm greetings to Riyadh from Munich. So today we will talk about digital transformation, about realities, major challenges, and business expectations, specifically in the context of energy transition. First of all, let me mention, and as you know, already several major companies, including Shell and BP, have declared a goal of zero net emissions by 2050. And me, as the person who is in the digital business since more than 20 years, specifically in the artificial intelligence area, I would claim that one of the most important tools for achieving such type of goals is AI. And for instance, for example, AI can significantly reduce emissions associated with the oil extraction and transportation through predictive analytics. At the same time, by constantly monitoring system parameters for various components, AI based on IoT, Internet of Things, can warn technicians days in advance of any problem that needs attention, utilize hydrocarbon fuels more efficiently, and prevent unplanned downtime. AI, with the help of elastic cloud computing, can also enable more efficient use of energy in general and help prevent leaks that drive up producers' carbon footprint. At the convergence of those technologies, of those four pillars, that's a phenomenon known as a digital transformation. And this sweeps every industry. It's at the top of the chief XOs and leadership agenda throughout the world. We at C3AI, jointly together with Baker Hughes, we deliver enterprise AI software solutions that enable and accelerate digital transformation. Our motto is to provide everything what is related to the technological layer to enable digital transformation. To realize this value, it requires sophisticated technology as well as deep industry expertise. At BHC3, we are tackling some of the most complex business problems in upstream, midstream, and downstream. And today I will give you also some examples on that. We leverage the power of AI, machine learning, Internet of Things, and big data. From well placement to asset reliability, to production optimization, to process optimization. And you know, BHC3 has been solving different business problems for some of the largest oil and gas companies in the world, such as Shell. Our partnership with Baker Hughes will accelerate those innovations and deliver digital transformation for the entire industry. And as you can see, the ambition is really high, and the volumes, the hidden values, are really huge, and there is a place for everyone to cut the piece of cake and to achieve our goals, specifically in the energy transition context. You know, but still, we talk a lot. So like 20 years ago, I still remember when we talked about AI, machine learning, that was really too fancy, right? There was no real business, it was just about the hobby. Nowadays, everyone speaks about AI, but still there are a bunch of roadblocks for digital transformation, despite all possible economical opportunities, right? In terms of reducing non-productive time or production optimization and asset integrity. What type of roadblocks do I mean? And as Syed mentioned previously, right? We talk really about people. We talk about their minds. We talk about lack of trust, competences, about innovations. We talk about also the way how the companies deal with people. It's about zero tolerance for any type of mistake. And typically when we try to involve innovations, then we need to fail. We need to fail fast. So we need also to change the corporate cultures on that. Let me talk about the business KPIs. You know, you may probably remember 2008, the financial crisis, when the standard business models were completely demolished, completely ruined by the fact that there was no money to buy new equipment. And only few companies were able to provide a completely new business model based on performance-based contracts, which would require a lot of technological competences within those companies. That's just one of the examples. Another small examples related to the KPIs that typically the companies try to address to the vendors, to the technological vendors, like accuracy of the models, like expectation that 90% of accuracy can solve all possible problems. And this is the wrong KPI, and I will show you on the next slide why. It's also about the process. So no agility, so design specification first. We lose the momentum, right? We spend a lot of time on trying to design things instead of trying to execute those things. We lose a lot of time on procurement that still takes 6-18 months, depending on your business. It's still about the investment approach, and how you calculate the values. Sometimes it's not about the way that you can directly access the economical value, but you reduce the risk. The same is also about sustainability efforts, It takes a lot of money, but at the end it pays off because you can really avoid many critical situations. And at the end, it's also about technology. So we know there are a bunch of technology vendors, There are many already available open source components and systems, but still there is no one unique view on the way how to apply those technologies. And this is exactly the way how we deal from C3I and Baker Hughes perspective. As I promised to you, I would like to be a bit provocative today. And first of all, let me reformulate well-known motto that the data is a new oil, and propose to you a bit different statement. Data is a new oil field, either greenfield or brownfield. And if you take this approach seriously from me, then you would understand that why I compare it like this, So for oil field, you need geologists, And this is in our case of the data, we talk about subject matter experts. You can't really deal with data if you don't have experts from the field who know this piece of equipment, who know this asset, who know this type of process or operations. Let's go further. When we talk about drilling services, it's all about data engineers and how they work on the data. When we talk about, let's say, pumps or different type of equipment, we are talking about data engineering tools. When we talk about production experts, it's about our data scientists. When we talk about well or reservoir models, it's about statistical and mathematical tools. If we talk about water fluiding, or we try to find a balance between injection and production wells, it's definitely about data quality approach. And last but not least, infrastructure, it's kind of our BI tools, optimization, planning, solvers, all different type of tasks. It's about machine learning and AI tools. And last but not least, financial economical model for your assets is the same financial economical model, because still we need to understand whether it's worth to invest in our data-driven approach or not. So at C3.ai and Baker Hughes, as already mentioned, first we try to address technological challenges on your side. And the very first one is really related to the time you spend with your AI or data-driven projects and how you spend this time. And we claim to say that we can be much, much faster to integrate your data into one unique visual data image that will allow you to build on top any type of data analytics. Second, we are talking about the execution of the projects, right? As I read recently, actually, in one of the articles, that sometimes it takes up to 10 years to execute the project related to digital transformation, starting with an idea and ending up with a modification of the business process. We try at least to come up with a productive operational experience already within 6 months. And that's exactly our objective when we work with the companies. We talk about very complex technological stacks, and that's exactly what we provide on our top from our side as a not only experience, but as a proven and already integrated solution. And last but not least, we are also talking about cross-functional collaboration. So we work with, sorry, there was a question?
1 minute to go, please.
All right.
Not your slides, thank you.
Yeah, and already today, as already mentioned, yeah, we're talking about proven solution, yeah, with billions of predictions, with millions of different type of models, and already hundreds of different customers across the world. So what is so difficult about the solution? It's very easy, yeah? You have a bunch of aspects that you need to interconnect between each other. And that's exactly what we offer from our side as a platform solution that will allow you to cover everything related to your technological demands. On top, what we built is already predefined business solutions that can be easily configured for any type of business demand. And one of them is related to our energy transition that will require real-time visibility across your enterprise. It's about AI insights to minimize energy consumption, utilize cost, and carbon emissions. And this is one of our solutions, which we call BHC3 Sustainability, as a foundation for your AI initiatives for energy transitions. Last but not least, it's worth to mention that we work jointly with Baker Hughes, as I already mentioned, with Shell, with Microsoft, to launch the OpenAI Energy Initiative. And this is kind of an open ecosystem for AI-based solutions for the energy and process industry. And you can always access already existing results and discuss with us the new initiatives and how to deal with them. And as a summary, I just wanted to mention that the main role is about leadership. It's about our CEOs who deal with the companies. It's about the way how they can change the minds of the corporate culture and to come up with a completely new setup to allow this new technological experiences within the company and also digital transformation, yeah, to allow this fast adaptation of the technology in the context of the energy transition. Thank you very much. And if any question, I would be happy to answer. Majid, we don't hear you.
We encourage our presenters to attend to the questions listed in the Q&A box. Thank you, Dr. Mike. Indeed, one of the setbacks experienced before is that many developers were operating in silos. For digital transformation to succeed, it is very important to develop end-to-end solutions and agile business models to nurture innovation and embrace digital transformation, especially in this era. Our next presenter or final presenter is Dr. Tony Edwards. Dr. Edwards is regarded as one of the key thought leaders in digital oil and integrated operations. He was a founding member of BP's Integrated Operations Program and was subsequently the global director for the Advanced Collaborative Environment Program that rolled out real-time collaboration centers around the BP portfolio of assets. In 2006, he moved to BG Group to launch its digital oil field program under the name iValue. In January 2009, he co-founded Step Change Global, a dedicated digital oil field consultancy and advisory company, providing consulting services to many leading oil and mining companies, including ExxonMobil, Chevron, and BHP. Dr. Edwards has actively participated and continues to engage at many functions and conferences related to the digital transformation space. Given his expertise in the oil and gas industry, both as a developer and a consultant, we're very delighted to hear his thoughts on the pace and size of digital transformation in the near future. Dr. Edwards, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this excellent event. I'm going to skip over the introduction to Step Change Global and concentrate on talking about new digitally enabled operations and organizational models. Just a little bit to say that we've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of great companies over the last 10, 12 years, and this is an aggregation of our experience in oil and gas, mining, and indeed the chemical industries. So what I'm going to talk about is the new digitally enabled operating models, which are enabled by these suites of technologies. So you've got all these technologies, IoT, analytics, machine learning, mobile worker, automation, robotics, drones. Really, what does it all add up to? What does it add up to, and what does it mean to operations guys? And I used to be an operations guy working offshore in the North Sea. What does it mean to people in the field who are actually running operations, who are running production systems, who are maintaining production systems? And the change in the way of working really adds up to these kind of things. It's about moving to a real-time way of working. It's about removal of the geographical constraints. It's about moving to a more multidisciplinary way of working. It's about value chain integration and optimization. And it's about being more proactive and predictive. And really, this is summed up by new digitally enabled remote operations models. And so, you know, these remote operations models and the data and information that we get are able to transform marginal brownfield operations, marginal greenfield projects. They're able to maximize production optimization. We're able to significantly drop OPEX. We're able to maintain and improve HSE performance. We're able to reduce CapEx in greenfield operations. And it's a combination of these digital technologies which is applied to an operation that is truly transformative. So what are the type of operating models that we can look at? And, you know, we have an equation as well. We have this equation which we say NT plus OO equals EOO. And for us, that means new technology plus old organization equals expensive old organization. So the challenge, we believe, is how do you align your organization and operating model to make use of all this data and information and do the fundamental things that we do in the oil and gas industry, which is produce oil and gas, you know, drill, develop new prospects, et cetera, et cetera. So the operating models that we're seeing and that have evolved over the last 10 or 15 years, first one is remote operations and engineering support. So you have the data and information, it comes off of your operation, it comes off a pump, a compressor, or well, whatever it is, it comes into an office environment and it is analyzed by a set of engineers who look at opportunities to improve that, improve the performance. That's the first model, and that one has been around for 15 years now, even more, and is actually quite common globally. And many companies have implemented this kind of model, both at the asset level and at the center of excellence type level. The second model we see evolving is the addition of remote control. So can we actually remotely control these operations from city center locations or other locations other than the actual operational site? And that's driven partly by the remoteness of the operational sites, but it's also being driven by the need to have the best people and where locate your control systems where the best people are. And the third model, which is really evolving, is the idea of having radically unmanned or minimum manned operational concepts. And this is coming through primarily in greenfield developments, but we're also seeing it being applied to brownfield developments to significantly drop the manning of an offshore platform in the North Sea or offshore Angola by something like 50%. And we see that the digital technologies play a huge part in that. And what I would say is that these models are key to actually getting the payback from spending all this money on the data and information and accessing that data and information. So here's some examples of remote operation support. And again, you can see that typically there is a center, there's a co-located set of engineers, and this is where the data and information comes into, this is where the new processes are evolved, and this is where the decisions are made. And so these examples you see here are global examples from ConocoPhillips in Calgary, from Santos in Australia, from Chevron in Perth in Australia, for a variety of different operations, whether they're offshore operations, onshore operations, drilling operations. This model is pretty well established now, and you will find many of these types of environments in many different companies. Of course, many of these environments are never, there is an issue around, you have to set them up properly, you have to look at the people issues, you have to look at the organizational issues. Frankly, the technology and the process change is the easy bit, but getting people aligned to work in this way is really the challenge, and that's what we focus on. The second model is combining the remote engineering and operation support with full remote control. And this is something which is evolving fast. It is something that's been going on for about the last 10 years. So if you see the example in the top left-hand corner, we worked with Santos 10 years ago to develop a combined remote control room for their GLNG, coal bed methane to LNG project. So they now are remotely controlling 5,000 wells and all of the associated equipment from a single facility in the center of Brisbane. Other examples on here, one is a midstream pipeline company which consolidated 27 control rooms in the field into a single control facility based in Houston. The one in the bottom of the page in the middle is a mining example, which is and the miners have been very much leading on this new remote control operating model. And the one at the top is actually a platform in the Norwegian sector of the North Sea, which is being remotely controlled from the beach. And what we're seeing is that this idea of remote ops and remote control is very much an emerging trend for new greenfield projects, but also there are a number of companies looking to apply this to their brownfield portfolio. Just a shout out to the miners. The mining guys have been looking at full remote control for more than 10 years now. And here's some examples of highly complex operations in the field which are being remotely controlled. So we've got examples, the top left example is actually a remote control and integrated operations center in Santiago, Chile. And that's remotely controlling the largest and most complex mine in the world called Escondida. There's 16,000 people at that site. And this facility is, an hour and a half flight away from that in the center of Santiago. And, you know, we see companies like BHP, like Tech Resources, like Rio Tinto and others doing this. And they're doing some fantastic work at combining remote control, which would have been distributed in the field into a single location.
Can you hear me, Dr. Edwards?
Yes.
Yeah. Please wrap up your presentation. We have a minute or two to go.
Sorry?
Please wrap your presentation. We have 2 minutes to go.
Okay, yeah, this is the last but one slide. So the final evolution of the model is looking at radically minimum staffed or minimum manned facilities, and how do we build that into the design. So what the question we're trying to answer is, if you take a brand new operation, a brand new project and develop it from scratch, and you threw all of the digital technologies at it, what does it mean for the operating model? And what we see is that you end up with operations which are remotely controlled, unmanned or minimum manned. And the current state of the art is that basically all gas operations can be remotely controlled and unmanned. The majority of oil operations can be remotely controlled and minimum manned with a standard crew of less than 20 people. And we see that that has the ability to significantly drop the predicted OPEX and the predicted CAPEX. You know, OPEX around 50% and CAPEX around 10 to 50%. So the summary is that, what do these digital technologies enable you to do different in your operating models? And really, that's where you make the money. You know, that it's about lowering OPEX, it's about lowering CAPEX, it's about increasing production and doing those with the suite of technologies. And we don't believe that any one single technology will deliver the whole transformation. It's a combination of those technologies and how you apply that to your operating model. And not only that, that we can do this now. Many of those examples that I give are over 10 years old now. So actually, you can do a lot with, readily available technologies, the base technologies of having data and information and being able to do analysis with that and being able to enable these remote operations, remote operating models. So thank you very much. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards, for defining the digital transformation at the very beginning and explaining how the operating models have evolved with time, attending to different sets of challenges experienced over the past 2 decades, as well as highlighting some of the successful projects across the energy landscape. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, but we can ask you and the rest of the speakers probably one question before moving to the next session. In your opinion, given your expertise in this field, and as the oil and gas industry embraces energy transition, who do you think the winners and losers are in this domain? So probably can start from Saeed and then Dr. Roshan and last by Dr. Edwards.
Well, I'll try. Anyway, I mean, the cartoon says it all, by the way. The winners are those who have power and vision, and in fact, who execute things. So it's not really a propaganda or, they walk the talk. And definitely that requires an investment, and it could be a pre-investment where they basically create the way to others, but definitely they're the first one to harvest. There might be challenges, there might be few mistakes, but definitely, in the oil and gas industry, mistakes in certain places are almost as a no, because they could be catastrophic. So it's really calculated mistakes or calculated basically implementations of things to produce basically the value. So it's power and vision. People who are marching first are the ones to harvest first.
Yeah, let me step in. First of all, personally, I hate to speak about losers, right? I don't want to speak about losers. Yeah, we don't have them. And there is no good pattern to talk about winners, yeah, who can win in this situation or not. But nevertheless, still, those who is able to be aware about the current issues in terms of the business and threats, actually, what's going on there, and also to react and to propose a new agenda. Those have a best chance, let's say, to win in the whole situation, yeah? And just to give you one particular example, yeah? We were talking just recently about associated petroleum gas, right? This is the thing, come on, in oil and gas, well known, right? And either you burn it, yeah? And you lose your sustainability goals, yeah? Or you try to reuse it, very easy, yeah? Why digital, yeah? Because this is the only way, just simply to control that your infrastructure is able to deal with this in the full scope. That's it, right? And that's exactly the way, one of the things, yeah, very practical, that can help you to win your sustainability objectives. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Lewison. Dr. Edwards?
Yeah, I think if you take the view that digital transformation is a digitally enabled organizational transformation, it's going to be the companies and entities who are most change friendly. So the companies that have a culture which will allow them to adapt and evolve over time and make those changes. I think one other thing is that when you're doing this, there are a number of things which are become a challenge. So size, scale, diversity of geography, diversity of cultures, and diversity of assets is not helpful. So if you are a regional company or a smaller mid-sized company with a low diversity set of assets, this is definitely easier. There's no doubt about it. So the companies which I think are going to find this difficult are the big IOCs with global footprints, with many different cultures, many different geographies, and many different asset types, because the amount of commonality that they've got to apply the technology is much lower. So if you've got a low diversity set of assets and you're more a regional or a country-based company, it's definitely easier.
Thank you, Dr. Edwards. And with that, I conclude the session. James, the mic is yours, and apologies for stealing 5 minutes of your time.
That's okay. Thank you very much. I trust you can hear me loud and clear. Thank you for those wonderful insights in session one. Really enjoyed the session. Thank you. My name is James Wimbury. I'm a managing director with Accenture here in the Kingdom, in which I lead our energy business. I also sit on the Business Management and Leadership Committee for the SPE globally, and have the privilege of being the chair-elect for 22-23. And finally, I will be your moderator for session 2 today. So welcome to session 2, which is titled Bridging the Digital Transformation and Energy Transition. And I'd like to start by thanking the host organization, the sponsors, and the people that have helped organize all this in the background. For decades, oil and gas has provided the globe with the best value proposition of reliable, cost-effective, and safe energy supplies. The metrics in the value proposition remain constant, and we've heard this in session 1. However, the current global greenhouse gas targets and today's definition of clean energy highlight an opportunity to create an economic incentive for decarbonization by producers, users, all of us playing a critical role in the energy transition itself. Just recently at Accenture, we surveyed people between the ages of 15 to 39 globally, and really interestingly, of this group in Asia Pacific, 77% said that they aspired to get a job in what they call the green economy within the next 10 years. So in this session, we're seeking to interpret the energy transition in the context of the oil and gas industry and the associated value chain, and examine the role of digitalization within this journey. It's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. So Dr. Medhat Kamal, who will be the 2023 SPE President, is a Chevron Fellow Emeritus with primary responsibility, including the competency development within the company, identification and development of emerging and white space technology opportunities, and the provision of technology advice and counsel to the senior management of the organization. He was formerly a fellow and leader of the Dynamic Reservoir Characterization Group, Chevron Energy Technology Company. And before Chevron, he worked for ARCO, Flopetro Shlumje and Omako. I'd like to welcome him to the stage and pass over the mic. Dr. Medap, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can.
You see the first slide now?
For me, it's cut off a little.
I'm asking if everybody can see my first slide.
I can see part of it. I don't know if that's the full slide. Maybe if you just zoom back out to non-presenter view, and then we can see the slides as they were before.
How about now?
There we go. That's better. Thank you.
Right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this important webinar. And I'm going to talk about some specific things regarding our industry, both as far from the points of digital transformation and the point of energy transition. So let's start by talking about the energy transition. Transition actually has been going on all the time. People started by using wood and coal and oil and gas. Now we're talking about renewables. So when we talk about energy transition recently, actually people are talking about renewables. And you can see on that slide on the right side, it's a slide actually that I got from the Energy Information Administration of the United States. And if you look at the title of that slide, it actually shows that renewables are going to be the largest source of energy for the year 2050. However, if you actually look closely to the data themselves on the slide, you find that although the picture shows renewables at the top line at the end, if you actually look at both the oil and the gas and you add them together, you find that they are a whole lot more than the renewables. I'm not saying that renewables are not going to be an important part of our energy. All I'm saying here is that the transition will happen over a lot of decades, and oil and gas are going to be an important part of the energy mix for a long time to come. Another point that's important to say that although the percentage of oil and gas in the energy mix may decrease from the currently, which is about 53%, to decades from now to be down to about 48, 47%, the actual amount of oil and gas that we are going to produce are going to increase because the total volume that we need for energy is increasing for two main reasons. Number one, the increase of the world population, and number two, the increase of the level of economical development for parts of the world. So when we talk about specifically about the transition within our oil industry, we're actually talking about two things. Number one, there is a transition within our current operations. And then number two, there is a transition because of our expansion of our technology and our skills into the renewable space. This is a photograph that I obtained from a recent presentation by Rystad Consulting Group following the COP26 meeting. And actually what they're showing that in order for the solar part to be able to provide the energy that people think they will provide, that actually innovation will be needed. So there is a whole lot of more questions about when actually renewables are going to reach the amount of energy that are under different scenarios are looked at. One more time, I am not saying that renewables are not going to be an important part of our energy mix. They will be. However, for our current oil and gas energy, they are going to continue to be an important part of the energy for a long time to come, and actually they will increase, and that will behooves us to actually be working on the transition in different parts. So when we talk about the transition within our current operations, we are cognizant of the effect of all the industries on the climate change. And within our own industry, some of the things that we can work on is things in order to help us with reducing methane emissions, flaring, and working more efficiently within our operations in order to reduce our footprint. When we talk about the expansion of our operations into the renewable space, there are several areas where we are going to be needed. One of them, for example, is carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration. As we all, I'm sure the majority of the audience in this webinar recognize, carbon sequestration is the most important area of actually reducing the carbon. And that is one of the important things our industry will do. Things about the new geothermal, enhanced geothermal system. That is also one of the things that our industry will be doing. Hydrogen, especially the blue hydrogen, is one of the things that our industry is doing. So when we talk about energy transition, we're talking about that both transition within our operations and transition into the new renewable space. We have an important role to play. So that is for the energy transition. Now let's talk about the digital transformation. So we all know that when we talk about digitization, which means that we actually are capturing data, we are actually digitalization, which means that we're actually understanding the workflow and the process, and we're actually using all this data in order to optimize our work in the digital space. Now, one of the things that is peculiar to our industry is that our industry is grounded in fundamentals of engineering and science. And we, for a long time, we actually used physical models in order to help us do our work, in order to help us manage all our operations. So we are comfortable doing that. We know how to do that. We're successful doing that. Therefore, when it got to the point where we actually have all this new technology of digitalization, we kind of became a little bit reluctant. Why do I need to do that? I already know how to do it. Although that, of course, is not exactly maybe the proper way to do it. Maybe we can think about it to say, hey, here is something else new. Maybe I can use it in addition or together, or even replace what I have in order to allow me to do a better job. So this is why we maybe might have been a little bit slower in catching up on the digitalization. However, we are actually moving a whole lot better now, and we're in the right process. So when we talk about the energy from the oil and gas, as I said, energy is going to be getting bigger, and our legacy energy sources are going to continue to be around for a longer short time. And what we need to do is that we need to, as far as our work on the digital transformation, want to find out how we're going to use that in order to reduce the emission from our legacy assets. And I mentioned several things within our current operations and our expansion in the renewable space. Well, I'm going to like to talk about, for the interest of time, one of each for each of these. So when we talk, for example, about reducing our emissions, some of the things, of course, we know that 42% of the greenhouse gases come from the oil and gas, 9% of that come from our operations, and half of that is actually fugitive methane that's coming from our emissions and from venting. And we also know that methane is actually a more potent greenhouse gas. It has 20 to 80 times more effect than the CO2. So there are actually digital technologies that can help us arrest the emissions from methane, which will help us in the energy transition within our work. One of them is actually to continue our energy smartness. We use a lot of data. We have a lot of digital information in our operation. But for a lot of time, we focused on improving our production and improving economics. We actually can use the same smartness in order to help us measure a lot of the data as far as the methane release and actually reduce that emission. Other thing is that edge computing, which allow us to actually make the measurements very close to the source and therefore allow us to find the solution and mitigate the problem much quicker. The emergence of the global data standards, which is something which all of us are working together in order to make sure that the measurement of the data about the greenhouse gas emissions, methane release from our operations are available to everyone in order to be able to mitigate this information. All these things these are digital technologies that can help us with our emission. And then finally is improving the efficiency of our digital infrastructure by using the advanced technological development and softwares in order to help us actually measure and mitigate the release of methane. So this is one example of how we can use digital transformation to help us within our current operation. Then the other example that I would like to give, I'm going to give an example about our digital transformation helping us within our expansion into the renewable space. And I will talk about geothermal energy. We all know about it is an important thing, especially the enhanced geothermal system. So there are specific things where there have been a geothermal energy datathon that actually happened in North America and in Europe. And in that datathon, actually, people focused on the application of the analytics and the data sciences, machine learning, artificial intelligence tools, and the oil and gas well logs in order to be able to determine the potential of the geothermal production in fields in North America. And similar things actually happened in Europe. The Europeans call that geohackathon, which is fine, but it is the same thing, which we're talking about the use of the data, the large number of data, and the use of the analytics and the machine learning and artificial engineering to help us use this data and reach a specific thing. Another example.
Can I ask you to wrap up now, please, in the interest of time for the other speakers as well? Could I ask you to summarize, please?
This is my last slide.
Thank you.
Another example of the use of our data into geothermal energy is the work that's being done in the state of Texas, where people talk about looking at well-organized production database from current or abandoned oil and gas wells. These data have details, high resolution, basin-wide temperature models, and that will allow them to find information about the formation temperatures where these wells, where they be favorable for geothermal application. So digital transformation is and should be helping us when we move into the energy transition, both within our operations and within our expansion into the renewable space. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Medhat. That's extremely insightful and much appreciated. Thank you. Okay, for our next speaker, I'd like to welcome Anak Karim. With a background in electronics industrial engineering, Anak specialized in quality, process re-engineering, and production process planning in the electronics manufacturing space. Building on previous experiences in the financial services sector, she specialized in business process re-engineering, LSS initiatives, and project management within both commercial and investment banking. Currently, she's the upstream digital strategy planning, value, and program management lead for Petronas, and largely overseeing digital transformation. Anak, over to you, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, James. I hope I'm audible. So first and foremost, I would like to thank CAPSAC for this opportunity for me to be part of the conversation. I am very humbled to be among the industry heavyweights and experts of the industry. So very overwhelming credentials. And I hope I would be able to provide insights to how Petronas Upstream is approaching this double transformation, I would call it, the digital transformation and the energy transition. Yeah. So it is very much a challenging times. Not only are we talking about single transformation, but now is the acceleration for energy transition, right? So going on to my slides. So Petronas has taken bold moves, bold steps to announce our aspirations towards energy transition. We have announced, if you see the news and also if you see our public reports, we have announced we're going to achieve net zero carbon emission by 2050. So in terms of putting strategies in place, roadmaps, this is something Petronas is very serious about. And these bold steps come with fundamentals. So when we say these bold steps come with fundamentals, what we are hinging on, the sustainability agenda and digital transformation is our net zero aspiration is possible due to the build-up that we have put over the years. So that build-up is about having strong operational excellence practices, technology and innovation delivery. So that is through our digital transformation and the corresponding governance. So when we talk about the corresponding governance, we talk about the funding mechanism, how we are funding digital transformation, the percentage cost of revenue that we put capex, opex, for digital transformation and energy transition, how we structure the value. So when we talk about digital transformation, value is how we are transforming ourselves into low cost, low carbon operations, measured by unit production costs, unit technology costs. So basically the succinct KPIs and targets that we need to achieve year on year. And all this within the guardrails of our governance and also risk, managed risk. Yeah, so we are very succinct on that. So you might have seen Tengku Taufik, President, Group CEO of Petronas, making this commitment, and also for the organization rally, both behind through our cultural beliefs. So all the staff that we have need to understand why and basically what thought process, cultural transformation that this one will also entail. Yeah. And when we talk, when I mentioned building on the strong foundational, strong operational excellence, technology and innovation delivery. So the many years of operational excellence, when we talk about our operations, reducing efforts to reduce hydrocarbon flaring, venting, optimizing production. This is something that I believe for many operators, many IOC or NOC, this is something that did not just happen. So those are the fundamental which we keep improving, as we mature, right? And so various other operational excellence before we talk about, before this energy transition became such a buzzword, it was already something that was put in place. Yeah, making cleaner energy accessible, where possible, increasing the efficacy of providing low carbon energy solution, such as natural gas and renewable energy. So for example, when we talk about greenfields, projects, okay, what are the immediate as is minimum requirement for renewable energy that we put in our green fields. Yeah, as you know, as fundamental as that. And touching on digital transformation, this is where I think digital transformation, the steer for that has made it possible. Energy transition is something that we can kickstart immediately. Why I say so is because the acceleration of technology and innovation stewardship. So in Petronas, the pace for technology through the TRL process, technology readiness level. So how fast we can get technology in the lab to being tested on our facilities, piloted, and how fast we can scale up. So those are our unit measures in terms of being serious about the pace and in terms of really making use of our digital transformation strategies that we have. Yeah, so whatever technologies that we have committed for gas technologies, for example, clean technologies, accelerating that and making the internal Petronas processes fast, removing bureaucracies so that we can get the technology out there and reap the value. Yeah, and of course, investing in nature-based solution that goes without saying lah. So, what are the strategies that is put in place behind that? Right. I would like to touch a bit when we talk about digital strategy. Right. Most of the time, when we talk about digital transformation, digital strategies, we don't say that it is about having an artificial intelligence roadmap. We don't talk about having a blockchain roadmap, but because those are technologies. But what we talk about is how is digital going to enable our business strategies. Like, so for example, when we say that we want to produce and become efficient, low cost operator. So our target is the unit production cost. And what can I do to bring down the unit production cost? When we're putting in IoT for uninstrumented fields. So how does that bring down my OPEX in terms of now we can minimize logistic costs. Now we can minimize maintenance costs. So we see it from that angle, and that's how we put the connectivity of why we are having these technologies in place. Artificial intelligence, we partner with a few players to proof of concept to get the additional barrels, the data-driven barrels. So what we measure is how much we can reduce the cost of production, and basically in our planning, get the oil coming from data, derived data. Yeah, so that is typically how we look into digital in our operations. So basically, we want digital to be part and parcel, business as usual, and trench in the way we work. So planning, when we talk about planning the barrels, digital barrels, and we talk about IoTs, for example, minimizing my maintenance logistic cost. So that is typically our lingo. Because digital aspiration to us is about creating value, increasing the human performance, and we find innovative ways to combine our information with the technology so that we can we can boost our human performance. So that's how we see digital transformation. Right. I mentioned just now the double transformation. So what does digital transformation have in common with energy transition? So I believe that was one of the questions that Capsup wanted some viewpoint in the agenda that was shared. So we see it from the perspective of strategy. What is the desired end state? So those are in all our aspirations. We talk about, just now I showed the President Commitment 2050 to be the net zero carbon 2050. At the same time, when we talk about low cost operations, optimize CapEx, OPEX, and ultimately it all gives the value. Yeah. And definitely how to get there, we all know we have the host government competitors that we need to sometimes partner with. Yeah. And we know that internally help required is along the people, process, technology. So this is where, regardless of whether it's energy transformation or digital transformation, we see the tactics need to be clear of how we achieve the strategies, how we put the targets and milestones. So like I mentioned just now, what we do is put target, set target. Digital must reduce my unit production cost X% in year 2021, Y% in year 2022. So having those clear targets that everybody needs to subscribe to. And definitely, again, when we talk about digital and technology, we want to be fast. And sometimes being fast, if we need to partner, we will partner. Yeah, partnerships. And then sometimes if the solution is already out there off the shelf, why do we need to reinvent the wheel? Let's just go and SaaS it, everything as a service. Just go and subscribe, test it. If it doesn't work, then just discontinue the subscription. But in here, what it means is being fast. And if we don't have to develop it, we don't have to. Yeah, so that's the take that the standard thinking that we have, right? So so when we talk about that, we are really serious in terms of looking into external viewpoints. So this is a bit of promotion there. If you will go to YouTube, YouTube, we have the Petronas Future Talk series of whereby we really look into the opinion, and we really look into what the industry, cross industry also is talking about. How we can, for example, approach R&D to unlock opportunities for sustainability and accelerating energy transition. We look into digital ingenuity for business sustainability, right? So how might we accelerate digital, and in what areas for future sustainability? So basically, if I were to recap, it is all about having proper strategies in place that everybody can rally to. So for Petronas Upstream, we call it the 50-30-0. 50 cash flow from operations. What it means is we really want to be able to operate cost effectively, so that then we can use the monies to fund other business. And when we say other business, fund actually also the technologies to enable energy transition, net zero. And basically, part and parcel of that is having clear roadmaps and plans. So one of the things that we are collaborating in the Malaysia waters, Malaysia assets, regulator and all the other petroleum arrangement contractors, are the carbon capture and storage roadmaps and plan. So there's collaborative efforts there. And building it into energy transition technology solution into our area development plan, field development plan. So meaning to say it's already part of the economics. The technologies being considered are already embedded in. So meaning to say when you create, you are born digital and you are born energy transition. So those principles, yeah. And again, making sure that when we deploy our solutions, the technologies we expedite it through the technology readiness, the funnel, right? So mature it fast, take it out of the lab, put it at the field, start implementing, get the value. So that's the thought process behind it. And collaboration is a must. So now when we talk about energy transition, is the collaboration inter-industry, intra-industry, what the other industries are also doing, and how might we replicate. So so those are the thinkings behind it, James and team. Yep. So basically that's what I have for today. Yeah, from Kuala Lumpur. Thank you.
Thank you, Anak. That was absolutely fabulous. And thank you for joining us from KL today. Really interesting insights that you've shared from Petronas, so we appreciate that. And I think the final point on collaboration, inter-industry was wonderful, and obviously we're seeing that here today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to welcome our third speaker, Samir Al-Shiri. Samir is a senior research associate in the Energy Transitions and Electric Power Program at Capstart. Currently, he's focused on creating data-driven tools to identify and evaluate different energy market scenarios, as well as using big data technologies to better understand the impact of behavior and the environment on energy consumption. Samir is interested in using technologies to facilitate better energy public policy and energy economical systems. He's previously worked at Electra in Australia and also has a background in entrepreneurialism and industrial experience working on award-winning projects such as the Burj Khalifa building management system. Samir, I'd like to welcome you to the stage and ask you to share your screen.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you for the organizer of the event, for the timely event, and our partners. We are in a time of a change, and there is no better time to talk about the digital transformation and the energy transition. So in this presentation, let me share my screen quickly. Please, if you can confirm with me if the screen is appearing now.
Yep, you're all good.
Perfect. So in this presentation, I will touch on some of the research that happened here in CAPSARC. It's a collective research with many researchers contributed to this and collaborated with the international and local organizations like CAUS, NEOM, and Catapult Energy System in UK. We will shed light on the power sector and the future of the power markets structure, and looking at cooling as a use case, experiment with Living Lab, and a pilot study that we actually did in Jeddah here in Saudi Arabia. Without further ado, I will just quickly highlight here how the history of our energy consumption in all sectors, industry, transport, and buildings. Saudis was focused more on the supply side from the 70s, 80s to influence development and growth. But now, today, in 2021, we are focusing on the demand. Why? Because we want to ask, are we getting the most value of our energy consumption? And research and data show that human behavior and environment augment our energy consumption. And we see digitalization will create new social and economic realities. If we want to move to a future or to a better market structure, to a better power sector, more sustainable power sectors, new innovative models like as a service model, which is the pathway to become more efficient, cost-effective, agile, and scalable, we must consider digitalization and transform, have innovative and sustainable transformation in a place. I recall the presentation by Dr. Saeed, people is the key and the best return of investment. And here I totally agree with this, of course, and here we can show why that. Looking closely at the power consumption, here in Saudi, we can look at how different sectors are influencing the demand. We can see residential, of course, at 49%, 13. It's amazing. It's very interesting to see this figure always. Well, we are in a transition here in Saudi Arabia. So how the future power market structure will look like? We are moving from centralized power to distributed energy resources. We can look at, if you want to look at the future in a clear eye, look at the new project, the Red Sea, NEOM, and the Giga project that happened here in Qiddiya and in the north, to see how the new market structure will look like. But digitization is a pathway to a new market business model. So here we are also talking about different type of a transition, the transition from a commodity-based model to a business or a service model. Decommoditization, instead of buying electricity as a commodity, customer could purchase product and can differentiate the intangible attributes like clean, reliable, servitization. Instead of buying a kilowatt, customer could buy the service electricity provides, like cooling and heating and other type of services. Now, the issue or the challenge here is that the current market is make it difficult to capture the value stream of all these pillars, like comfort or how clean is the energy. That there here where digitization and a digital infrastructure in our power sector could be useful to quantify these attributes. Also, digitization is a key enabler for the demand side management. I will just say smart meter is the core of the Kingdom digital transformation strategy. See that millions of smart meters units are already being installed, but how you can utilize that is here. We have the peak shaving, reduce demand during peak hours, for example, controlling appliances and customer behavior, load shifting, moving loads from peak to off-peak. Examples, the use of time of use, of course, rate to incentivize the time shifting. Of course, a different energy efficiency measure, reduce energy demand throughout the year, including building insulation. We already saw the new building code. We saw the different program under for more efficient AC. They increased the minimum efficiency rate for the new appliances. And we already have an incentive program that to incentivize users to go with more efficient AC units. We have also district cooling, like what we see here in the financial district, and other efficiency measurement for different type of appliances. I told you I will focus on cooling and AC consumption and air conditioning. Why? Why it's interesting. You can look at the figure here. The share of AC in household electricity consumption in 2018, Saudi Arabia is in the top 70%. But the question is, how sustainable is the demand for cooling here? If we want to tackle the cooling problem, so this is, again, I'm using the air conditioning as an example here, how digitization could lead to mitigate the risk of a transition in this sector, and also how a strategy leadership, and again, I recall Dr. Saeed and his presentation, could also minimize the risk of this digital transformation, like, for example, the launch or the rollout of the smart meters that happened in the last 2 years here. So looking again at the cooling problem, it's not only the unit efficiency, it's not the building thermal performance, it's usage behavior, it's the end user demography, it's the climate. And again, if you want to quantify this, have better understanding, have better projection of these, you need to have a better insight. Better insight, you need to have a good digital infrastructure and system in place to capture these. Now, looking at the Living Lab, I believe many of you are already familiar with the concept. It's a pilot study, but where user is at the center. Living Lab can be established here in the Kingdom. We actually did a few studies that we recommend to have living labs, establishing living labs in different climate regional here in the Kingdom, and to empower consumer and policymakers through better information. Again, better insight is better products. here I will shed light on what we can do if we have these type of collecting insights or advanced system that collect different type of information in a closed environment. We can see here, let's imagine this is a signal or a consumption signal of a house, an X house. And we can see the buttons here, and we can map these buttons on different appliances. And again, it's not that straightforward. There's many factors influence that signal or the aggregated signal. And here we can show how a digital infrastructure with innovative application can disaggregate, analyze, using the power of AI, using a machine learning models to collect and extract value from these streams. Here we are shed light on, again, the same example. We are combining different data streams, the power consumption and the indoor environment. This is actually one of the studies that we are pursue, and we did a pilot study in an apartment or a typical house in Jeddah to see how the power and the indoor environment are synchronized and what we can learn from this two different data streams and create value out of it. Here, this is an actual data. If you can see the figure in the top right, in the top left, we can see 4 bedrooms. The lines, the colored lines, is the temperature, and the total power represented in yellow. You can see, and of course, we have the different household members' age, preference, and how they would like to be in a comfort level in their rooms. And you can see how different preferences are influencing the environment and the total total consumption. Of course, also we consider the cooling area, the hours of operation, again, the behavior with the thermostat setting, and the unit maintenance. We found that one of the room have very poor maintenance on their air conditioning unit, and we recommend to do that, to do some sort of cleaning to the filters, and suddenly the consumption and the impact on that environment it was clear. We provided the user with a small dashboard. We experiment with different layout and different type of information, and we collected all that information also and experiment with different policy scenario to inform, for example, the nudging policies, which promote more prudent energy use. So there is a benefit in both sides, and I will consider this a success pilot study where we got insightful information about the user, and we will actually get surprised how the different type of patterns and how this can be collected at a city or district or regional wide, how this will influence the policies, how this will influence the expenditure in the power sector and on the oil and gas industry also. The future project, the exploration project, all this can be influenced by this big data that collected at a city and district level. Again, here we are shedding light on the Sustainable Living Lab as a hybrid approach, again, exploring and experiment, analysis, intervention, and prototype, monitoring and co-creation, and the main goal is this is for user and by user. Thank you so much. And I will give the mic to James.
Thank you, Samir. You clearly have a passion for your subject and also a passion for your contribution to the kingdom. So that comes across very well. I learned a lot as well in your presentation, so thank you for that. Very insightful.
Thank you.
Okay, for our final presentation, I would like to welcome Mohammed Al-Habib. So Mohammed was appointed as the Energy Transition Executive for the Middle East, North Africa, Turkey, and India for Baker Hughes in June 2021. So we welcome him to his new role. And in this role, Mohammed will lead the company strategy for new growth areas to drive a low carbon future with their customers across the region. Prior to this, he was the VP for Saudi North Gulf and the East Mediterranean region, with a responsibility for driving growth and operational excellence with customers and partners across Baker Hughes' portfolio, while focusing on driving localization and building local talent and capabilities. Mohammed, I welcome you to the stage, and the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, James. Good morning, good afternoon. And I would like to start thanking CAPSARC and SPE to kickstart this series of knowledge sharing with those strategic topics that this is just a start of many, as Dr. Saeed mentioned. Perhaps, there is no more central topic today than energy from its prices, reliability, supplies, environmental impact. The whole globe and the media today, through the leaders, economists, think tanks, advocates are trying to address those associated challenges to reach the needed balance in the energy. The ultimate outcome of this debate and argument is affordable and reliable energy with minimum impact to the environment in the way of harmful emission across the entire value chain. The agreement that we see in the media today and many activists that we can observe that the transition is only as simple as switching to renewable and alternative energy. However, this is not accurate. When one observes today energy landscape from supply and demand and the infrastructure and the investment has been done in the operation, the production and the technology, and the impact of the marginal increases happened this year in the energy prices on the economies and the average consumer, it becomes increasingly hard to imagine a civilization can flick a switch to move away from hydrocarbon as simple as this. This simple explanation to the transition will drastically hampering the economic progress. And this is why hydrocarbon as a form of energy will continue to play a role in the decades to come. However, the human collective would need to find a way to make it cleaner, safer, and accessible. And this is why we define the energy transition in this context and this background. With that in mind, it becomes a bit more apparent why multiple frameworks in the 360 dimension that we believe looking into the energy transition space today are required to reach this target, one of which is centered around technology. This framework tackles, tackles multiple aspects centered around improved productivity and efficiency, decarbonization, diversified energy mix, while at the same time maintaining the security and sustainability aspect of the energy. The framework is complete through a focus on existing brownfield and greenfield infrastructure, industrial processes, use solution, energy production and generation efficiency, new energy capability and compatibility with enablement. This journey and framework is central to our strategy in Baker Hughes of taking energy forward. which is why Baker Hughes today is an energy technology company, looking into different dimension of the 360 degrees framework to the energy transition, from technology, efficiency, anchoring the hydrocarbon as a key enabler of the journey, as well as the financial and the economical stability of the equation. Today, if we look into the holistic view of the technology, the majority of the technologies need to reach net zero Paris Agreement target are not yet mature. As you can see, 75% of the technologies that needed to be available and deployed, either in the early stage, not really ready to be commercially deployed, or in an R&D phase. And this comes into where the second framework come into the play of the energy transition framework, which is a combination of economics and policy, intends to accelerate this transition by creating incentives that bring everyone to the table. And this is where the COP26 final guidance and recommendation and action plan is all about. Policies for applying carbon limits and associated carbon taxes create an opportunity cost to emitters across the value chain, either through added cost or capped production potential. Whereas the introduction of cap and trade regulation, the opening of trade and storage utilization market, in addition to the promotion of the circular carbon economy practices, and this is where the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is a leader in putting those literature around the economical enablement and the financial catalyst to the transition. This creates an incentive for emitters and operators to further lower their emissions if marginal gains of trade and utilization can be demonstrated. Further, it can create an incentive to accelerate the development of technologies in addition to the green bonds that the financial system can incentivize the community and introduce liquidity to the market that can accelerate the project and the technology development and adoption. The collective creates an ecosystem between regulators, emitters, producers, users, technology company, and the financial community that drives a clean future of the world while positively impacting the economic growth. This brings me to the last part of my presentation, and that is the answer of the ultimate question of today's webinar: where and how does digital play a role in the energy transition journey? The answer is sort of as simple, however, it is complicated. Simple in a way to explain and complicated in a way to deploy and partner. The unprecedented computing power and the advanced artificial intelligence solution that now surround us create a very strong opportunity to unlock great potential and address complex and pressing challenges. Digital transformation with no doubt a pivotal vehicle. In addition to improve the efficiency and reliability, it can play a key role in the decarbonization path and journey for any oil and gas or energy value chain. In fact, it's extremely difficult for me to see a path to decarbonization or sustainability where digital does not play a key role as an integral part of the ecosystem of any new technology, be it in the advanced sensors, control models, AI models, and also linking it to any economic and financial abatement or monetization services. As early as today, digital plays a role across the entire value chain of energy transition. It starts with emission management through emission quantification, verification, using advanced technologies from satellite, advanced sensors, drones that can reliably detect different greenhouses, create emission models, profile the carbon and the GHG of the assets, and then the ability to quantify this in a great advanced analytical regulatory and financial impact. As for the standardization, the digitalization of emission quantification unifies and benchmark reporting mechanism. And this is where all the COP26, all the international agreement and obligation and announcement are really putting a pressure to have a leading and stronger regulatory and reporting system. For instance, the OGMP 2.0 or Oil and Gas Methane Partnership 2.0 intend to introduce a golden standard allowing stakeholders to understand companies' actual methane emission performance. Another example, such as Saudi Aramco, which arguably has the lowest methane intensity in the world or in the industry, are increasingly interested in highlighting their work on reducing methane. Both examples put into light the need for a robust reporting implementing a digital emission monitoring ecosystem, and also transfer the knowledge and experience and the benchmark that we achieved so far as an industry. Additionally, efficiency improvement contribute positively to emissions through advanced sensors, control system, and AI algorithm. The concept of emission control through efficiency is not new and can be observed in the automotive industry, which is an end user, where advanced sensor and onboard control models help automotive manufacturing keep pace with dynamic emission regulation. And when it comes to the storage market, the minority and integrity of carbon storage which are wells kept under extreme pressure, would not be possible without advanced sensors and control technology to ensure the safety of these facilities and the community at large. In addition to this, digital and AI have an indirect positive impact on emissions through a combination of advanced failure, detection critical, and supply chain optimization to ensure failing components do not lead to leak and compromise the system and the atmosphere. To recap, the decarbonization is deemed a critical mission by the world community at large, and for its targets to materialize without negatively impacting our economic growth, oil and gas will continue to play a role, or to be very accurate, the hydrocarbon will play a big integral role as part of the energy mix of the greater civilization. However, technology development, of which digital would play a key role, is needed to ensure the resulting emissions are managed and mitigated. This can only be achieved within the required time frame through a framework where policy, regulation, economics plays a role that turns emission challenge into opportunity. Thank you for your time. And by this, I end up my sharing. Thank you. Back to you, James.
Thank you, Mohammed. Extremely insightful and very detailed. And I'm sure, as some of the questions were, if we can get copies of the presentation afterwards, I think many people would like to reference that. So I'd like to wrap up session 2. A couple of points, because we are respecting the time for the next session. First of all, if you have any further Q&A, I would ask you to use the function within the bar at the bottom to send those in to the presenters and speakers, which will be remaining with us for the next session, and they can get back to you offline. And then I'd just like to let you consider about what you've heard in session 2. I don't know how this happened, whether it was intentional or not, but what we ended up hearing was a wonderful story that started with Mehta and his view into, as an industry titan, arguably, and somebody that is the incoming president for one of the oldest societies in the industry, how the energy mix will continue to evolve, but undoubtedly the need for that energy will remain, of course, and I think we're all fairly aware of that. We then moved to a wonderful presentation from Anak, and hearing from a lead NOC within the region, and how they have evolved their organization and the very high standards they're setting for themselves with Petronas was just fabulous. And one of the points that I noted there, Anak, that you wrote down was how fast we could test things and how to scale things. And, you know, we are recognized in the industry, as we all know, for these types of, you know, innovation and exploration, and applying that to the new is certainly a very important part. So thank you for sharing that. And then Tamir gave us a view really of the consumer of our industry, of the utilities industry, and how that itself is evolving, obviously rapidly within the kingdom, which is in itself rapidly evolving. But I think one of the key important points is not, can we as an industry keep up with the evolution of the consumer? And this is a really important thing to consider. How much will the consumer and the user of the energy dictate how we operate in the future? And certainly something interesting to consider. And then finally, with Mohammed, a provider to the industry and a company that has guided the industry in many ways over the years, very respected. We got some real detailed insight into the EM ecosystem. And what stuck with me was this final component of decarbonizing and monetizing. There is an opportunity in this, and I think that is well recognized. And the point you put on evolving regulations is something that I think all of us need to be cognizant of. We are looking forward in the region to welcoming COP28 in 2 years' time. So we all recognize that moving towards the commitments that have been made in the kingdom and more broadly are front of mind of the most senior leaders and of course of all of us here today. So thank you for your time. Thank you to the speakers. And I would like to pass over the next session to Ed for session 3.
Great, thank you very much. Let me start by introducing myself, gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this esteemed panel. I'll be moderating the next panel. And my name is Ed Sleeman. I'm the CISO at King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. I'll be moderating this panel for you today. So let me start with some introductions first. I'll introduce myself. I've been in the IT industry for about 35 years now. Last 15 out of which has been in security, mainly in biometric security, and then recently in the past 10 years in cybersecurity. Today, our panel discussion is going to be about application opportunities, potential solutions, and associated risks. So there is an economic incentive to digitalization, as we all know, either due to incremental efficiency improvements, advanced data collection and analysis, or process management and automated decision making. It also poses challenges and risks if not carefully accounted for, or if there are no redundant systems in place to ensure operational continuity. It also requires fit-for-purpose de-risking strategies and mitigation plans to minimize adverse unintended consequences as major players in the oil and gas industry gradually embrace digitalization the way forward. So this session will dive into digital solutions currently playing a role in achieving carbon neutrality and addresses the underlying risks associated with data and cybersecurity by answering the following questions. First question is this: what is the role of digitalization in advanced emission quantification and fugitive gases monitoring and management across the oil and gas value chain? The second question that we're trying to answer in this in these presentations is, what are the measures taken by regulators and the oil and gas industry to ensure resiliency and the redundancy to combat operational disruptions, data management, and cyber crimes? Without further ado, let me introduce my first, because we're running out of time, let me introduce my first speaker and presenter, Dr. Tony Kakpovia. And I'm sorry if I massacred your name, Kakpovia, I guess. He's a solutions engineering leader. Dr. Tony is the MENA region solutions engineering leader with Avitas, a Baker Hughes venture company focused on 4IR technologies around machine learning and emissions management. Tony holds a PhD in chemical engineering from the University of Manchester in England, an MBA from Queen's University in Canada, and completed digital transformation course at MIT Boston in the US. He has over 30 years of oil and gas-based experience. He previously worked for Saudi Aramco for several years as engineering consultant and chairman of Inspection Engineering Standards Committee. Prior to that, he worked for Shell Canada, and his body of work include multiple joint patents and several peer-reviewed technical publications. With that, I'd like to ask Dr. Tony Kakpovia to please start his presentation.
Thank you very much, Ed, and thank you to the organizers for the opportunity to present here, to CAPSAC and to Baker Hughes. I will share my screen and we'll go from there. So let me know once. You can see Ed and the rest of the, yeah. Okay. It's okay. So my presentation, I will talk a bit about emissions management, specifically with respect to this digital transformation conversation, and around the oil and gas sector, but it will apply across multiple other sectors. We will also look specifically at the application opportunities that are available. I will start by saying I'm speaking today from the Dhahran Technology Center of Baker Hughes. We are in Dhahran, and why show this? The point I really want to make about this center is the fact that currently the goal is to develop technologies from Saudi, made in Saudi, to support the world around this energy transition and the energy technologies. Our center has 45% Saudization at the current time. Over 40%, 40 of those are dedicated to R&D work, and we have a solid 23% plus female participation in the work that we do. The goal and the KPIs is around the increasing efficiencies, increasing productivity, reducing cost per barrel, and bottom line, reducing carbon footprint. And from the presentation so far, even from Petronas and from all the other speakers, you see the alignment that we are trying to accomplish from our center. The total focus here is increasing our ICTIVA, which is the sort of in-kingdom total value added in the work that we do. As far as digital transformation goes, our understanding and the way we see digital transformation is basically using 4IR technology to transform either how a business process operates, a business model, or one of the other issues. And when you listen to our leader from Petronas, the point is a lot of folks really want to transform their business model. And with emissions management, it's all also about transformation. And currently, 51% of digital transformation applications relate to transforming market opportunities. So there is total alignment here between emissions management, digital transformation, and energy transition. So we'll dive straight into the very first question that was asked, that what are the application opportunities? So there are two parts to it. The first part is what is the role for advanced emission monitoring technologies? And the second part relates to the role of regulators. And I would take the regulators part first and foremost. When we look at energy technologies, the regulators' role seems to be setting those policies, setting the targets, 2030 targets, 2050 targets, 2060 targets, the overall roadmap. And they provide also the governance on that. The finance and the investment structure is also coming from the government end. The cybersecurity framework, which is a key part of energy transition, is also set through the national and regulatory framework. On the part of organizations, the role is supporting with advancing technology, developing new knowledge methods, being innovative, and generally being cognizant of our carbon footprint. So there are carbon footprint responsibilities for all organizations, whether they be companies or institutions. And also ensuring that we run as organizations seriously focus on cybersecurity in the operations that we deliver. So let's look at the other part of the question, which relates to the emission monitoring quantification management across the value chain. A typical oil and gas operation has emission in multiple sources, from the production end of it through the midstream, through refining, and all the way to the end point where the product is used in our cars. And there are different levels of GHG coming from all these sources. I won't dwell on all of it, but I think a lot of our speakers earlier had touched base on this. The other thing I want to also mention is the fact that currently, when you look at energy transition, the emphasis is on remote operations, like walking, reaching difficult, hard to reach locations. So almost 70% of the applications is centered around that. And the recent incidents of COVID enhanced, even accelerated that, with folks having to work from home and work from different locations. But there are other issues also around data analytics and modeling and cybersecurity and connectivity. And you will see how some of those came to play in some of the technologies that we have delivered. So in terms of the value chain, we see multiple steps to it. We need to minimize our operations and maintenance risk, which is the carbon footprint. We need to improve the integrity of our assets. And we need to keep on going for higher efficiencies. And around that is the technology around storing and utilizing CO2 through its full life cycle. There are other issues also around GHG management and regulatory compliance. My colleague earlier spoke eloquently about that. And this is a different version of the slide that Mohammed showed, but the concept is the same. The whole message is the same. Our ecosystem around emission management is always ensuring that you can monitor, and in the heart of it all is digitalization. You need to be able to show transparency in the emissions that are emitted, and you need to be able to predictably measure and generate some insights from what you measure. Those insights will lead to mitigation and prevention strategies. So Mohammed talked a lot, but the end game here is to turn the whole emissions management conversation into something that can be monetized. And getting there actually has a role for almost every service sector. And I wanted to show this slide to show that if you took a holistic approach, multiple small and medium-sized enterprises will be generated out of this. There should be corporations that are supporting on the digital service side. There should be corporations doing asset optimization. It could be in operations or plant and equipment, or even conducting the feasibility studies. And even within equipments, you have things from control to non-metallics to valves to compressors, all provide opportunities for participation. So rather than looking and seeing a shrinking economy, you actually are seeing a growing and really expanding economy that provides opportunity for multiple new technologies. This is also a slide that is also very familiar to a lot of our participants today. This is just focusing on the CCUS value chain. And if you look at that, the message I tried to share earlier shows that there is opportunity to participate for multiple organizations and multiple companies. You can be involved in that in the CO2 capture, CO2 transportation, CO2 utilization in the form of either new fuels or cement manufacture enhancement. And there are also storage opportunities and monitoring and doing all of that. In going further, I wanted to touch base a little bit on how do you set a KPI for someone who is supporting this technology. The current value system requires understanding what's my current operation. So the KPI will go in the form of saying, all right, can you help me improve my productivity? If I digitize, can you go from a single operation to say 5 times my current operation? Can you create for me a safer environment by digitalization? Can you provide me 20 to 25% reduction in the time I spend to get a job done? Can you provide for me advanced reporting methods in 3D format where I could zoom in and find out the source of the emission? So this is sort of where digital transformation heads. Another format that we see KPI based on outcomes you could go from a situation where you said, if year one, you could monitor 4 sites, can I digitize to a point where I could monitor multiple sites? Could I go from a situation where I was just checking leaks to a situation where I'm doing leak detection and repairs simultaneously? Can I enhance the user interface and the user experience? And could I even augment that experience where I could be part of the action? So these are sort of possibilities. What I'm showing here is a detection, plume detection for methane, which was highlighted earlier as 80 times, almost 28 to 80 times more intense than CO2. And we have technologies today that can detect that. These are some of the emission monitoring solutions that we have today with digitalization. You could track the source of the emission, you could size it, and you could localize it. And with digital transformation, you could also have a 3D image of the asset. And you could almost use that as part of your CapEx to plan what to replace next and how to replace those. So digital transformation actually offers significant opportunities. In this photo, in this present slide here, it shows what you could do. You could create a digital mesh over an asset where you could monitor your emissions 24/7. And the data generated could be used to plan operational efficiencies and do capital expansion programs. Some of the other things we could do also, currently you could even localize the source of emission. The information you got from your 24/7, if it's too large an area, you could deploy a UAV that could actually take you to the exact source of the emission. And only digital transformation can do this. And that allows you to gather both the data and you can transmit the data and take actions very fast. Some of the earlier presenters, especially from Petronas, you hear fast seems to be part of a true digital transformation. This shows some of the visualization that we could do. Digital transformation also is visualizing well, being able to show the asset remotely and let folks see exactly what you are doing, where you found the leak, and what could be done about the leak source. What I'm showing here are real-time monitoring tools that are currently available. So we could do data collection aggregation from multiple sources. Those source data could be transmitted securely. Cybersecurity was part of the conversation. And we could make that data available in high quality. We could host it, we could, and currently either in field or in your office, we could do the visualization as well, some of what I showed earlier. And you can do all of this 24/7, 365 through a solution center. And you can take that a little bit further with data analytics. You could do machine learning. You could do more precise prediction around the tool. And you could also do something else that was talked about earlier, edge device computing, which means that very close to the source of the leak or the emission, you could collect data at that point. You could analyze the data there, and you could bring all of that data to a situation where you could make intelligent decisions that may be remote and far from the source of the location. All of that brings us to something that I really wanted to share with you, is that within Baker Hughes as an organization, we actually have an energy transition knowledge center that is open to all. And you can subscribe to this knowledge center. You get current information on what's available, what we know about both what we can do in the energy transition space and what other technologies are out there and how they have evolved in recent years. So with that, I will say thank you very much, and I will take questions related to the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Really appreciate it. Very insightful. We'll wait to see if there are any questions, or should we wait for questions later on? I think that, yeah. Okay, actually, we'll probably keep the questions till the end. For the sake of time, we're going to move on to the next presentation. And with that, let me introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Mr. Yusuf Al-Ghamdi. He's the head of energy sector at Sedaya. He's an experienced leader with a demonstrated success history of working with working in leading global corporates as well as working with the government. He's skilled in leading teams, building agile organizations by leveraging strong experience in operations management, conflict resolution, design thinking, negotiations, and leading P&L and sales management and contract management. With that, I'll leave the floor to Mr. Yusuf Al-Ghamdi. Please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine and we can see your presentation.
Great. All right. Thank you very much for the introduction and thank you for the chance to be part of this great session so far. I'm talking to you today from Riyadh. I'm heading the energy sector in Sedaya, and I thought to talk about something that is very close to my heart, and it is in the heart of what this is all about, and it's about carbon intelligence and digitizing emissions management and addressing the associated cyber threats. So I tried to combine both interests in one topic here. The energy transition is driven by the energy trilemma, as you all may know, which is composed of three imperatives: availability, sustainability, and affordability. Energy availability aims to address the large portion of the population which do not have reliable access to electricity, which is currently composed of 2 billion people, and there is a risk that this is increasing number and as the world heads toward a 9 billion population by 2050. Number two is the energy sustainability, which aims to keep global temperature at 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial revolution by 2050, as outlined in Paris Agreement and further emphasized in COP26 in Glasgow. This is the main driver for many net zero emissions announcements we have seen around the world, including Saudi Arabia's net zero ambitions by 2060, and the one that's announced by Saudi Aramco to be by 2050. Energy affordability aims to address the trade-off between the large investments that are needed in the energy sector and the associated returns for energy companies and the energy price for consumers. Energy companies around the world are working currently, or actually they are underperforming on the S&P 500, which leads to less appetite for investments in the domain. Thus, we see new energy business models emerging to address the energy trilemma. The new businesses or the new business models can be broken down into three archetypes: energy majors, decarbonization specialists, and low carbon solution leaders. For energy majors, these are the ones focusing on transitioning into integrated energy companies instead of oil and gas companies. This means covering a larger portion of the energy value chain and driving volume from electrons instead of hydrocarbon molecules. Thus, the new KPI is profit per energy produced, which is dollar per joules instead of dollar per barrel. These companies are at the core of convergence between oil and gas and utility sectors. Number two, the decarbonization specialists, and they focus on producing oil and gas, but with lower emissions. These companies plan to reduce Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions as much as possible while offsetting Scope 3 emissions through carbon offsets, such as the CCUS. Low carbon solutions leaders are focused on being leaders in renewable energy through innovation in new technologies. We see these companies building large capacities of renewable energy around the world by being the most efficient and having commercially optimized operations. Thus, these three archetypes need to combine their sustainability targets with digital to have an enterprise-wide capability called carbon intelligence. Carbon intelligence is unlocked through key business levers across measuring and monitoring emissions, auditing and reporting emissions, and setting targets for emissions, including performance management. Digitalization is having a key impact across these three levers by setting the right infrastructure, and which is essential in terms of IoT smart sensors, contextual data, and AI applications or digital platforms, visualization of dashboards and so on. Sorry? Yeah. Okay. For these levers, digitalization is not an option. The vast amount of data that is needed to effectively and accurately track and optimize emissions needs the latest digital technologies in the market. In addition to the new type of digital technologies that companies need to incorporate in the future. Carbon intelligence also need business drivers that can summarize by reducing, replacing, optimizing, and offsetting emissions, in addition to replacing portfolio and trading monetization or monetizing carbon. Digitalization is driving real-time optimization through prescriptive AI solutions using the large sets of data. AI is helping to reduce production from assets based on the carbon emissions from each asset. Similarly, AI is having a strong impact on how companies rebalance their portfolio. While oil and gas companies typically look mainly at the cost of production, while this is being changed to also looking at the carbon intensity. There is a tangible value to be unchecked or unlocked by carbon intelligence. And this can be summarized into these 6 elements: differentiated, compensated commodities, operations and portfolio innovations, brand value, cost of capital, risk, compliance, and trust. And in the race of digitalization, security concerns holding businesses back are high. While digitalization is seen as the key business driver for the 21st century, it doesn't come without its risk. The main risk today that is holding business back, especially for energy companies and KSA companies, is cybersecurity concerns. As the vast majority of executives embrace digitalization, they will need to upgrade their cybersecurity efforts. This means addressing skills gaps, ensuring AI applications are responsible and do not violate privacy issues, while also changing the mindset of collaboration. Companies need to be detail-oriented when it comes to cyber threats. Attackers only have to be right once, while businesses have to be right every time. Means cybersecurity needs to be addressed as soon as possible. The energy sector has seen a major increase in cyber threats, almost a 42% increase in ransomware attacks. Last year, massive data breaches led to the personal information of 500,000 oil and gas customers. A key insight is that 41% of these breaches were from indirect attacks via the ecosystem. This shows that companies shouldn't only protect their own data, but also collaborate with the rest of the ecosystem partners to avoid breaches. Finally, across all the sectors, cyber attacks could cost business up businesses up to $90 trillion by 2030. The rise in cyber threats in the energy sector is driven by 4 trends. Business transformation, which is happening all over the companies across the globe by mergers and acquisitions, while mergers and acquisitions continue to drive massive recognition across the industry, which creates some confusion in role and responsibilities. Number 2, IoT edge connectivity. And number 3, COVID effect, which commodity pressures today are focusing on the sector to decide between prioritizing budget in operations or security at the same time, like VPN and RDP requirements which creates an increased exposure. And the fourth one is moving to renewables, where varied standards in the security testing of equipment results in inconsistencies in security postures and cyber resilience levels across the energy sector, amidst an increased rotation to renewable wind and solar specifically. And thus, sustainability, digital and AI, and cybersecurity efforts across the kingdom need to collaborate closely. As we head toward a net zero emissions future by 2060, data and AI will play a key role in achieving this target. Here at Sedaya, this is a key focus area for us to help the sector build and have the right access to data and the latest AI technologies to enable us on our journey to net zero. The World Economic Forum labels pioneers in sustainability and digital as twin transformers, which are expected to become the leaders of tomorrow. However, digital and AI should not be deployed without implementing the leading practice when it comes to cybersecurity. We need to make sure we are responsible in the way we deploy digital and AI, and as cyber threats increase in the intensity in nature. Given that the energy sector is one of the main targets of cybercrime, we need to be leading in the way in this domain. To achieve all of this, the ecosystem needs to collaborate more closely to ensure the net zero targets that are announced by Saudi Green Initiative are enabled by national strategy of data and AI, as outlined by Sedaya last year, and securely protected by the regulations highlighted by the National Cybersecurity Authority. And we need to make sure these 3 imperatives are cascaded down to energy companies moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hamdi. Very interesting presentation. I'd like to move on now, if possible, to our next presenter, just for the sake of time also, Mr. Amarnath. He's the head of Energy Information Management at CapsHeart. Amar is responsible for running all facets of the energy data portal design, development, and research insight web apps. He has over 20 years of experience building data management platforms for research and technology industry. Prior to joining CapsHeart, Amar was Chief Information Officer for SwiftPage, responsible for all technology and customer care delivery. At SwiftPage, he led the tech transformation into enterprise-ready platforms from a startup mode. And before that, he was Information Technology Vice President at IHS, where he led the design and implementation of global data operations, tech platforms, and strategies. He also served as Senior Director of I2 Technologies Data Consulting Services Division for a decade, holding several international positions. With that, I'd like to ask Mr. Amarnath to start his presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me introduce now the same topic in the view of an average developer. So I'm coming from more of a citizen approach than a vendor with a software by mind, right? So with that, I work for CAPSARC as a Director of Energy Information Management based out of Riyadh. So I'm going to address three topics: transformation solutions as I see it, and I will also wear a cap of open source solutions. And I strongly believe the innovation has to come bottoms up from the colleagues and the teams and the employees, as well as partners helping to implement the solution. We'll talk about frameworks for resiliency. Also, we'll wrap with energy data and model tools that CAPSARC is making it available, free to use, open source. So understanding the business context for a minute, there are more than 270 million people, that's pretty much 90% of American population per se, moved out of poverty in last 10 years in the world. And still, there's 1.3 billion people below the poverty line, and rise in energy demand will continue. So that's the business context, right? So for oil and gas operator, it's about price, demand, supply. For utilities, new distributed generation is coming up, and customer expectations on the green is increasing, right? Refineries, they want to figure out what is the new sources going to come in, and also what is the demand of their output. So as we laid the context of where we stand, let's now talk about the solutions, right? So of course, there are plenty of solutions, and it is critical to start looking and doing proof of concepts on technologies that are in the hype cycle, somewhere ready to deploy. Because there are many technologies out there. It started, but it's going to take 3 to 5 years to get and fully leverage and technology to get mature. Many of the hype cycle goes up and then drops down and then stabilizes over a period of time, right? So as you see here, be it Internet of Things, we talked about, analytics and the AI, chatbot, and CASP, the cloud access security. These are all something we need to be doing proof of concepts now and exploring the value from it, right? And as we move forward, then we can go into the next step. How do I ensure my lead generation all the way through my processes until we generate the cash in the company? Everything being cloud. How do we get there? And now, whether we use one vendor for a software or 10 vendors, and also legacy inbuilt systems, there need to be microservices orchestration. Every system should have open APIs that you can interact, and every API becomes a business subcomponent that you can call and execute a function from another system. So the microservices orchestration as a technologist is an important concept that need to progress. Likewise, when I take a couple of examples, 5G driven machines, right? Mesh technologies, blockchain, NFT, data fabric. So augmented reality. There are certain minimal POCs we could do, but some of these to really mature, it's going to take some time. So the theme is that whether it's a digital twin, blockchain, all of this has to take its life cycle moving forward at the right pace. So there was a question, how can we quantify? This was addressed by Tony as well in the past. So I'm Anthony. So I'm going to make it, there is one at an entity level, how do you do it? Now at a country level, to understand the policy and its impact and what policy reforms need to be brought through, there are sources where we could use, and there isn't country level data yet, but there are initiatives like Climate Trace from Rocky Mountains, where they have taken satellite images and used the machine learning algorithm to understand the state of leakages and then report at a country level. So there are technologies out there that will help us as we go forward. So, and again, coming back onto the item where we have these pieces of technologies and how do we map to the value chain? And there are many of those which are open source that you could use today. And so what I would ask is inspire your teams within the companies and identify a data, a digital champion in each of your departments and have them look at and do the proof of concepts before you go and embrace a big solution that might cost millions of dollars and a long time. Once you are committed, then you cannot. So again, I see all these tools are tools in a toolbox for a carpenter. It depends on what you want to create. Just because you have one tool from one vendor doesn't mean you're going to solve all the solutions, but you need to be using combinations of tools to get there. So now I'm moving to the second topic, is about frameworks. So there are measures by regulators and the energy industry to ensure better resiliency, better data management, and reduce the cybercrimes risk that we have. If you look at here in Saudi Arabia, right, we have cybersecurity national strategy. We have a regulatory framework that helps. It almost as a guide that shows you how do you identify, how do you protect, how do you mitigate, how do you avoid, right? So, and then we have newly introduced data governance framework from National Data Management Office. Our other presenter, Yusuf, talked about the Sadaya, and it is a part of that organization that we can embrace. So these are the governance frameworks that will help us to mitigate the risk. And how is industry taking this forward? Right? If you look at Saudi Arabia, has put together an intelligence sharing consortium for the energy industry that has 14 partners collaborate and share on their independent awareness of cybersecurity threats and share it with their partners, which is JVs and ecosystem, etc. And also Saudi Aramco has been a founding member of World Economic Forum's Center for Cybersecurity, right? Which actually builds the resilience, collective response intelligence, and also network technology innovation happens. So all these there exist. I'm proud to say, at least based on the International Telecommunications Union recent assessment, which is 2020, Saudi Arabia has been ranked as the world's #2 when it comes to legal, technical, operational capacity related measures that has been put in place. So again, another topic about cybersecurity. What is the risk? What is the average risk for an energy firm? So if you look at between last year and 2019 and 2020, there is a 30-fold increase of risk. How? If you look at the average spend, median loss. So if there is a ransomware attack, typical money the company had spent just to recover the network situation has been $300,000. That's in 2020. So how can you avoid this? You can avoid this even doing some basics. So there have been some issues like, for example, Colonial pipeline related item. How was that issue mitigated? How did it even create? Because there was a VPN access given to a colleague who was no more actively using it, but he used the same password in a different system, and that's how they got into. There was a 9-day disruption on the oil prices at the gasoline pump increased by 6%, and transportation modes had to change. A lot of impact there exists, but following a framework will significantly reduce the risk. So again, let me move on to my last topic on data tools. So the data pace is increasing at a very significant, right? So you would see 100 times faster than what it was, and digital apps next 4 years, right, will develop as many applications as it was in last 40 years. And with the COVID-19, there's a running joke. There was always a 5-year plan of workplace optimization, digitization, etc. When COVID-19 came in, within 4 months, every company in the world was digitally enabled 30% better than what their 5-year plans ever did for the workforce. So again, there are new data sets with the increasing volumes of data that we need to keep in mind and design. And CAPSAR here is providing one such solution for the energy stakeholders within Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world. We have put together an open data portal in the last 5 years. There is 80 million records of information organized and available in the form of a data card with a table view, analysis view, and API ready. Every data set is API ready, free to access. You don't have to even register, and you can access this information. Please do check it out. The easiest way to check is just go to Google and search for CAPSARC data and tools. You will land up into our data portal. This is not for discussion now, but there is an architecture, how you can organize the data collection, cleanup, wrangling the data, and building the models within your ecosystem. So these are all some of the technology architecture. If anyone is interested in your technology team, they could access how we process the data, what kind of machine learning tool and analytics tools that we use, and what kind of ETL technologies that we use. Finally, I'll take just 1 minute here to talk about, okay, we all talked about machine learning. Here, what you're seeing is there are 3-step process to run a machine learning on an available data set. This is a data set that was from a gas well in the United States. Step 1, we uploaded the data and selected the series. Step 2, we trained the model. That's what you're seeing in this screen. It's low resolution because some of the data was confidential. So, and you basically clean the data, you set up the algorithm that you want to run, and you go ahead and forecast it. These are the types of tools that are available. Please encourage your teams to go and check it out. There are easy to use open source tools as well, which will enable you to try with your machine learning algorithms. It has to be combo. It cannot be just from a vendor. It should be internally organic as well as vendor assisted that will get you where you want to be. Again, IoT is moving fast. And if you see one screenshot here, this was from Grafana, which is an open source tool that you can develop yourself if you had an engineer spend, say, 3 months of time in understanding the real-time data that you can make it available. So there are technologies and workflows that are available. Here at CAPSARC, we are building several digital tools to enable the policy decision makers to understand the various energy challenges and opportunities there exist. Please go check out our website. And there are a bunch of tools. Here's one example of a tool that showcases various types of policies that we can apply to reduce the CO2 emissions. And this is for a country level here in Saudi Arabia. It's available on eps.capsarc.org. And recently we launched this in the COP26, which is a circular carbon economy aligned and index tool where we go and measure. We see the reduce, recycle, reuse, and remove concept, but measure the performance score of each of the countries, as well as enabling score of each of the countries, performance based on energy efficiency, etc. And then policies enablement. Using that, we come up with a ranking, and this is available for us to learn how each countries are progressing towards the CCE goal, which is reducing the carbon and emissions footprint. This is my last slide. Key takeaway, please go to Google, search for Open CAPSARC. You will land up into our tools. We are here to provide more access to open data and policy making tools. With that, over back to moderator.
Thank you very much, Amar. Very interesting presentation, specifically about cybersecurity, which is my domain. A lot of insightful data that you've given. We're going to move on to questions and see if there are any questions from the public audience and try to answer these questions. Then I'm going to hand it over to Majid to do a wrap up after I finish here. So let's see, are there any questions? You should have.
Go ahead, looks like there is a question for me.
Yes.
Do you believe the cybersecurity target is diverting the genuine goal, which reducing global warming? So it was, something where cybersecurity is a genuine risk for either it's a business or it's for a country, and we all need to work using the frameworks the country strategy is. But irrespective, we will all work towards in making the data and policies and tools available for the team to access. And another question, how do I access CAPSARC APIs? Very simple, go to Google, search for CAPSARC data. It'll take us to portal. Once you're in the portal, every data set has a page called API, and you click on it, you should be able to access.
other questions for the other presenters? Majid, do we have time for more questions? Are we out of time? I cannot hear you. I don't know if you're on mute. Majid, you're not clear. Your voice is not clear. Can you all hear Majid?
No, Majid, I think your voice is breaking out, your internet. Maybe you may want to switch off your video.
I'm sorry, this is Fahd Al-Malki. Please go ahead with, we have 2 more minutes before Majid comes up again.
So I may have some questions. Let me see if I have some. Do we still have Dr. Tony on the call?
Yes, that's correct. I'm still on the call.
Yes. Can you probably name a few and elaborate on any related KPIs that you hope to achieve this year?
Okay, some of those were probably in the presentation that I shared. Typically, customers are wanting to know how faster can they detect emissions, okay? So one of our major clients, they are making a lot of noise about it, so maybe I can talk about it as well, is Shell. They put out a big note saying how quickly we have helped them identify a source of emission, for example. And that is a straightforward KPI where they said, can you tell me within a 48 hours window, the source of a specific GHG, a specific leak, in this case, methane. So this is a true case of digital transformation. So the whole system is set up for you to gather this data, process the data, size the leak, and provide that info. It does require significant infrastructure because in the cost of that output is cloud infrastructure. So that brings us to what we need to have in Kingdom, is cloud infrastructure that communicates, firstly, the Internet of Things, the remote sensing. That data is passed into cloud, processed, and transmitted to the end user within the 48 hours window that they want. So I think that's a conversation we need to have in Kingdom on how to grow our cloud infrastructure securely in Kingdom. That will help with reaching some of these KPIs. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So another question for Youssef. We understand that Sadaya has a key role in advancing AI adoption in the Kingdom. What do you think is the role of Sadaya to bring the ecosystem together to enhance AI adoption across the energy sector?
Very good question. Well, to effectively accelerate AI adoption within the energy sector, a comprehensive ecosystem of technical service providers, technical or tech companies, energy companies, academia, startups, and government entities will need to work together. As you may all know, earlier this year, Sadaya and the Ministry of Energy have collaborated to launch the Artificial Intelligence Center for Energy, also known as ACE. And the plan is to bring the ecosystem together through 5 key steps. One is to build an extensive AI use cases portfolio across the energy value chain that addresses many aspects of the energy key KPIs or key values. Second, engage service providers, tech companies, and startups to have a strong understanding of the services and capabilities that each company can offer. 3 would be conduct workshops with energy companies to identify relevant use cases. We call them here ideation workshops for each company based on the business needs that they have. 4 would be provide AI solution development capabilities through facilities, subject matter experts, training, funding, and so on. Number 5, and the last, would be align with key government entities for nationwide deployment and scaling of AI applications to those that are national-wide initiatives.
Thank you. One last question to Amar, probably, if possible. Are there any open data use term standards? And can you name API-ready open data portals in the KSA?
Yeah, there are. So, it's a very good question. The open data is a relatively newer area, even though the organizations and government entities have been sharing in, even in the United States, 2008 is when the real data started sharing from the government programs in the form of spreadsheets, and later it became now in the form of databases and analytics. So there are open data standards that you can, like, for example, if you look at it in art world, you have Creative Commons, right? In data side, it is something called ODBL. So these are the 2 or 3 standards that exist. So that gives an idea of what data can we use, how to use it, can we recreate something using that data? So because it's a knowledge share that has to grow over a period of time. So I hereby request, if you are publishing any data, please refer that to an open data standard so that we know how to utilize that data so the economy can further flourish using your data to monetize building applications, etc. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I would like to conclude our session for today. And I want to thank all the presenters for such insightful presentations. Thank you. On to you, Majid.
Thank you, Ed. Do you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, we've reached the end of this webinar. On behalf of Dr. Fahad Al-Turki and our partners, we would like to extend our sincere appreciation to our esteemed speakers for sharing their insights, our moderators for managing the sessions, and you, our participants, for your active participation during the Q&A sessions. Most importantly, we would like to thank those who work diligently behind the scenes to ensure the success of this event, namely Osama Al-Mu'min, Farah Al-Shahir, Fahad Al-Malki, Rani Al-Gar'awi, Asil Baljoun, and Judith. And with that, I would like to thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Majid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well done, Majid. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you all. Bye.